Hey, here we are. We're going to talk about the big ideas from confidence intervals. And again, tomorrow we'll get into the nitty gritty in terms of how to actually discover, or figure out what should our percentage of confidence be and in terms of how big our intervals will be. But for now, here are the things that you need to kind of remember. Point estimate. Point estimate is a statistic that provides a reasonable estimate about the population parameter. This is usually done by sampling, surveying, that type of thing, and getting information back. Point estimates are to parameters such as p hat is to p and x bar is to mean. We've already used these, but now you can kind of start to see where, since we won't always know what the population or what the parameters are going to be, how we can use these statistics to get us there. Okay. Number two, actually, this is 2 and 3. For interval A to B. Okay, so this is an interval starting at A going up to B. Your point estimate is going to be A plus B divided by 2, so the average of A and B. And then the margin of error is going to be half of the difference between B and A. Okay, and again, we talked about that on the previous page. You'll see it here in the example. This next part is the part that you need to kind of have just in your gut. You just need to know this. And you will by the time we get through the exam. But so we are a certain percentage confident that the interval from A to B captures the true, and then you're going to have the parameter context there. This parameter context is not going to be a simple, word or two. It's going to be probably a fairly in-depth phrase that will refer back to the original situation. Okay, just giving numbers as answers isn't going to be good enough. And we'll go through an example here in a second. And then lastly, remember that in terms of the decisions, okay, the confidence intervals contain all plausible values. So if you have a confidence interval, the true answer of what we're talking about, because we're 95 or 90% or 99% confident that the true answer falls in that range, then that's the numbers that we're going to go through and talk about. Anything outside of that isn't plausible and we're not going to be able to use. Okay. So for the example that I want you to do, we'll explain it and then have you guys pause this. Is this random sample of 100 adults are asked if they pay for monthly subscriptions that they don't use, like magazines, apps, online programs. For many of you, might also be health clubs. Many do because they've never taken the time to cancel the subscription. So a 95% confidence interval of the proportion of adults who pay for the subscription that they do not use falls between 0.352 and 0.548. Okay, so take a look at the other questions, jot down some answers, and come back and check them out. All right, so the first question is interpret the confidence interval. So that's what we're going to do up here, just like what we did up here. So I'm going to leave that there so you can see it. So we are 95% confident that the interval from 0.352 to 5.48 captures the true proportion of adults who pay for subscriptions that they do not use. So as I said above there, notice captures the, and what are we talking about? True proportion of, who are we talking about? The adults who pay for subscriptions who they do not use. Not adults, but you got to go through and say all of that. Okay, it's complete sentences and then probably a little bit more. You need to have the detail in there to get credit for it. Then they ask you for the point estimate and margin of error. The point estimate is going to be halfway between 0.352 and 0.548. So that turns out to be 0.45. And then the margin of error, again, you're going to split the difference here and split in half. So you get 9.48. And again, in the back of your heads, you might be thinking, hey, subtract those two. It's the same idea. Okay. Now, the last question is interesting. And this I would be interesting to see what you would have had without having any idea. But again, this goes back to the idea of plausible answers. Based upon this survey, a reporter claims a majority of adults continue to pay for monthly subscriptions they don't use. Use the confidence interval to evaluate this. Now, majority means more than half. Does more than half fall within our confidence? Well, yeah. 0.5, 0.54, 0.523. I mean, all of that works. However, notice, so does 0.352. We're saying we are 95% confident that, let me come back up here, the true answer falls somewhere between 0.352 and 0.548. It might be more the majority. It may not be the majority. Any of those numbers could work. So what we have to say here then is because the confidence interval contains values both above and below 0.5, we can't be sure that the majority of adults pay for subscriptions that they don't use. We also then go on to say that we don't have convincing evidence to support the claim. Okay. So again, you can say, well, not only this is what our confidence interval says, and then you come back and say we don't, and you need to come back and state something about having you don't have the evidence to make it work. So it's not just doing this; you have to draw the conclusion for the reader as well. Okay. Because again, they're like, well, it cannot be sure. Okay. So that means like you might, well, maybe it worked. Well, yeah, maybe it worked, but we don't have any evidence that would allow us to say that or support that. Okay. So that is the basic ideas of confidence intervals. Tomorrow we're going to get more into the math behind it. So I hope I will see you then. Talk to you soon.